Welcome back. Today we're going to talk about semi-progressive reloading. You know, one of the more interesting aspects of reloading is that it can be a means to an end, or it can be an end in itself. And in large part, it, for me, is an end in itself, just like woodworking is and cooking and all those things. I didn't get this by accident. You know, everybody likes to sit in the chair that they made at the at the lathe and things like that, and everybody likes to cook the food that they eat at the dinner table, and everybody likes to shoot the ammo that they make. But for some people, it's not just a process. It becomes actually part of the sport and part of the interesting aspect of it. You know, it can involve a lot of, with me, for instance, it involves an awful lot of testing and just load experimentation. I collect a collection of data that allows me to be able to shoot different powders, different loads, different bullets, and all this stuff with all the different rounds that I can concoct for different rifles. So it's a never-ending process. Let me explain the difference between semi-progressive and progressive presses. Progressive presses are nothing new to me. Back in the early 70s, when I was a department armorer, I kicked out, I estimate it was about 1.5 million 38 specials on a Star Universal progressive reloader. That was a machine made in San Diego that had a round aluminum base, had a cast iron head, it had a steel work plate. Had a lot of heavy cast brass on it, machined brass. It was a wonderfully intricate machine that involved all kinds of things moving in 10 different directions at the same time every time you pushed the handle down. And it had a Hyomi case feeder on the side, and it had the automated primer feeder. It had the whole works. But for a number of years, that's what I was doing. So. I got a bad shoulder from the many nights that I spent downstairs on the midnight shift cranking out ammo. So it's one of those things that I fully understand, and I understand all the pitfalls that surround it and the mechanical difficulties that surround it. But the progressive system means that several operations are being done to a number of different cases all at the same time, and with every manipulation of the handle, cases dropping off, fully loaded cartridges dropping off the other end someplace. So all you're doing is basically feeding cases in, perhaps feeding bullets, and as you're manipulating, everything is going along, and it involves multi-stage processing of ammunition. They can even be linked up to automated systems, motorized, and that's but that's the progressive system. That's the fully progressive system. The semi-progressive system allows a person to basically cut his steps. You're not constantly going from a loading block to the press, basically, for different operations. Only one step is being completed at a time, but the cases basically are being worked on one at a time with a single ram, and the different dies are performing different operations one after another. So, but before you start jumping up and down that we have all this equipment, I do want to caution you. If you're a person who likes to relax and spend time at a loading press, and you don't have an awful lot of cases to make, I would say up as many as 40 or even 50. You might find that just a single stage press will suit you just fine. One of the things that occurs as you start automating this more and more, as you start making it more unified with one stroke of the press, it starts to become a little bit laborious. It starts to become a little bit more like sitting in a machine shop doing the same thing all day long. So if you're a guy who's all day long sitting there grinding parts, or if you're a person who stands at a Swiss screw machine all day and does that sort of work, you might know what I mean. It's nice to sometimes break up the work a little bit and have a change of pace. So, you know, you might appreciate the fact that you only do 20 or 40 or even 50 cases at a time with one operation. Then you can take a break and do something else. Just to have a change of pace sometimes is a very refreshing thing. So there is a little bit of it adds a little bit more monotony to the whole process by every time you add some of this automation to it. Now, it's certainly the only way to go if you're deciding that you're getting into a sport that involves shooting an awful lot of 45s, an awful lot of 38s or something like that, or 9mm. You really, if you're shooting 100, 300 or 500 rounds a week, you really have to have something to help out the process. But it does become a little bit more monotonous, and it does take some of the enjoyment away. For all I enjoy, coming down and popping out 50 or 100 rounds at a time with my fully progressive Loadmaster, I pretty much had it. By the time I get to 150 rounds, I'm all done for the evening. I really don't care to do much more than that. It becomes a little bit boring, a little bit monotonous, and a little bit more drudgery. And with the semi-progressive press, 20 or 40 rounds, that's about it for me, and I've about had it. Now I'm not in my 20s anymore. To sit down in a given night and turn out 1,500 rounds of 38s, I'm not into that anymore. So I'm speaking to you. You know who you are, but I just want to kind of give you an idea before you start going out, rushing out and buying all kinds of exciting looking equipment, that there is a change in the modality and the way that the way you approach this stuff once you start doing it. But anyway, I'll show you what you need to have for the semi-progressive press. We're going to be using the Lee semi-progressive press, the turret press, and turret presses have been around a long time. Back when I started loading, the Lyman had a turret press. The Spartan turret press had already been around for a couple of decades, as far as I'm aware. So these are not new inventions by any means. The world hasn't all of a sudden discovered hand loading. I think the biggest thing is that a lot of people have finally realized that hand loading has been around for a long time and want to get involved with it. So let's see what happens. Now, semi-progressive presses are made by different companies other than Lee, but I have the Lee system here, and the process that I'm going to bring you through is applicable to most of the other systems with certain refinements. They all have their own particular method of charging powder and things like that. But I'm going to bring you through this system and show you what you need. First of all, with the Lee turret press, naturally you need to have you have to have a turret for each of the calibers that you're going to be loading. And I'm using the 4-station turret press. Now there is a 3-station turret press which applies some limitations, and I'll show you as you go around here. We've got the sizing die, which these are all the same dies that you would use in a single stage system naturally. And in fact, I set them up exactly as I showed you in the initial video on how to reload, the basic video. So we've got the Lee sizing die, full-length sizing die and decapping die right here. I moved this die over one station because I wanted to create a position for another die, which I'll show you. And here's your bullet seating die and the factory crimping die. The one die that you will need if you're going to be charging powder from on your station is you need to have a rifle charging die. The rifle charging die allows you to mount the double disc powder measuring system directly onto your turret. And this is actuated by the case. The case comes along, and when you apply pressure to the ram, the case presses on a if I can show you here, it presses on this sleeve, and that sleeve is inside the die, and that in turn applies pressure to that actuator rod. This is actually a hollow tube. It applies pressure to that, and it moves the actuator arm. So, but you need to have a Lee powder charging die. Right, that's the rifle charging die. Now they come in two different sizes. Now these can be further elevated with a riser. The riser will elevate it a little bit higher should you need to have it goes into these machine screws should you need to have a little additional height for taller dies around it. So if you're using dies that are taller than these are 300 Savage, so they're fairly short. But if you have a set of dies, for instance, for larger calibers, you have to have higher dies. The riser. Now keep in mind that there's a maximum powder charge that you can place into a double disc measure. The maximum amount that you can charge with a double disc system is 3.14 cc's. Now that doesn't have any meaning to you at this point, and we'll show you what that does mean and how you arrive at those measurements, but there is a limit to how much you can charge. And then you have to go to a drum measure of some sort, which they do have now. They recently came out with a drum measure which will allow you to automate that process with a drum measure that will hold more powder. Now the discs that are involved, these are each of these holes are measured in cc's. The largest disc that's available, the largest cavity that's available is 1.57 cc's. So you can double up and have two of them at 1.57 cc's, which gives you that maximum limit that I talked about. The double disc system is something that you really will need if you're going to be charging rifle cases with the Lee disc charger. And if you're going to be just charging pistol cartridges such as 45s and 38s, 9mm and things, the single disc system is fine. So you can that's an option that you can have. If you're using the double disc system, it will come with a couple of adapters which elevate these. I'll show you. These elevate the powder hopper so that they fit over the two discs. The way this system works is, again, very simple. It manipulates the disc back and forth underneath the powder reservoir and basically just dumps a perfectly measured amount of powder down this tube right here every time it comes over. You'll need to have a calculator, whether you have a smartphone or a calculator or a bench calculator. You have to have a calculator if you're going to do this correctly. I do recommend that you mark all your powder. It makes life a lot easier when you get a can of powder. This reference sheet that comes with the double disc measure will give you all the data that you need. It shows all the information. For instance, this is Hodgson H4198 powder that I'm going to be using. If you look down the list here, you'll see H4198 right here, and the VMD, they call it, is the volume of volumetric density, is 0.0750, which is what I wrote on the side of my canister when I purchased the canister of powder, and that number will become very significant to you. And I also wrote down its number in the order of burning rate amongst all the powders. So I know that, as I showed you in the earlier video on powders, that it's a good thing to mark down the order which it appears on the burning rate chart amongst all the other powders. That way there you can organize them in your cabinet, and so that it's easier to find them and organize them. So you have your VMD 0.0750. Always make sure you verify that number, because that's extremely important. You don't want to get that mixed up. What that number represents is the amount of cc's that 1 grain of powder weighs, so occupies rather. So 1 grain of powder occupies 0.0750. It converts the weight in grains, which is actually a weight in pounds. Grains is 1/7,000th of a pound. So it converts that to the volume that it occupies in a powder measure. So if you have a load data that requires a particular charge of powder, say it requires 23 grains of powder, you would simply take, right here, you take a calculator. It's very, very simple. You take 23 times 0.0750, and that comes out to a disc that would fill up 1.72, or you can round it out to 1.73, moving the 5 up one point. So you're in all these discs, I've written down right here the maximum single disc is 1.57. So in that case, I would have to go up here to this reference chart, which shows me that I want 1.73, and 1.73 appears right here. So if you can see that, 1.73 appears right here, so I need a disc that's 1.02 and a disc that's 0.71. And I'll go over that in more detail, but that's how you would stack them. Remember this cardinal rule: the larger hole, when you're stacking them, the larger hole always goes beneath the smaller hole. That way you have, in other words, the shape of a bottle. You don't want to have any shelf between the two discs where powder will sit and not be dispensed. You want to have the smaller disc always above the larger disc. That's it. And when you get a double disc system, you'll end up with two of each of the discs, so that you always have the ones that you need. So that's it. Let's begin. Oh, and also the double disc system requires the longer screws, machine screws that they will give you to accommodate the extra height. The first thing that we'll do is install the rifle charging die. Bring the lock ring up to the top of the thread so you have plenty of room to manipulate this. Now, there's a strong caution I'll make. Be very sure that at no time do you ever bring the case up to the point where you feel resistance. When you feel resistance, then you're crushing your case. This press is strong enough to collapse this case into a deck of cards very quickly. All you need to do is thread this on there. Be sure you have your insert and be sure that it's facing in the correct direction. Once I get it just to that point, I don't want to go down any further than that. I will take the double disc measure. I'm going to be using the double disc feature. So remove the top part with the thumb screws. Never use any pliers on these. There's no need for any kind of extra effort to put those on. These are strictly thumb screws. And one of the things that you should always get is the swivel adapter. If your charger did not come with a swivel adapter, get one. This is kind of a must to me. It makes life so much easier. It allows you to thread the entire mechanism on top with just this thumb screw rather than swiveling the whole thing around. So we'll bring this on and thread it on. Once it's firm and tightened, now we're going to bring the case up. Now remember, don't have that die down too far, because we're going to bring this case up, and we're going to watch as that brings this actuator arm over. Is you take your largest orifice right here, the largest charge hole, and that's the one we want to line up with this charge hole on the top. Now this is the charge hole right here. This is where the powder drops into the die and into your case. Your your charging disc, the reason why you want to use the largest hole, this is only to calibrate the setting of your die. The reason you want to use the largest hole is because that's the one that would have to clear and make it all the way over this hole. If that one clears, they all will clear. Now, the 157 I said is the largest one. What you want to look for is, here's the number right here, 1.57, and it's the slot that appears directly underneath that number. You can see there's a number that appears here, and the slot that appears directly underneath that number is where the actuator arm is engaged. So be sure you place that. That has to go directly over that number, and double check always when you're putting these discs on. Be very, very cautious, because again, this represents the effect of the pressure that's involved with shooting your gun. You don't want to ever make any mistakes. But this is only to calibrate it. We're not going to be charging with that hole necessarily. So at this point here now, with the arm fully down, you notice that the case is pushed up and the actuator arm is moving over. So placing this on, I simply turn the entire die. I'm looking to bring that hole over this hole. So we'll just turn the entire die until that happens. We can see it's a little ways to go. You'll have to relax the pressure on the case. That case, the rifle case has become part of the mechanism, so be very cautious and do not apply pressure where you feel the case has reached its limit. Now this is a very good close-up look of what's going on. You can see the charge disc riding on top of the plate, and right now you see there's a shelf in here. You want to have absolutely no shelves whatsoever, because those will capture powder on the way down. So all we do is simply relax the pressure. You want to turn it until that shelf disappears gradually. Don't rush. Now we're approaching that point. If we go much beyond this, we're going to start collapsing the case inside, which has become part of the mechanism. Now I still see there's right here, there's the lead edge has still got a shelf there. We want to go beyond that just slightly, and until the entire disc has passed over, being very careful that I don't apply more pressure than necessary so that I collapse that case and distort it. That's it right there. I'm fully, you can see that's it. I can feel a little bit of pressure on that case. I do not want to feel pressure on the case whatsoever. So once you've gotten to that point, that now, I'm not sure if you can see, but right now I can move my straight edge up and down there, and there's nothing there to catch. So that's fine. That's all the movement that I want to have. Once you have it in that position, then we'll just simply tighten the lock ring down without making any further adjustments. So with pressure on the arm, so that it doesn't move, so that the die remains stationary, turn your lock ring down all the way onto the turret, secure it firmly. Just finger tight is sufficient, but if you want to give it a little bit of a nudge with your crescent wrench, that's fine too. But it's not going to go anywhere. Release it, and we'll continue on with the rest of the assembly. Now I don't have a .30 carbine, but I've got a bunch of surplus ammo, and what I've done is I've been using these as bullets. They make terrific ammo to plink with, to have a good time with, and they're even useful for hunting small game. So I've pulled the bullets, and these bullets are sitting on a magnetic plate, so you can see what's going on here. These are actually steel core. These were made in 1963 at Lake City Arsenal. But the steel core bullets are 107 grains. They're not quite the 110 grains that many of the bullets of that era were. But for the .30 carbine. But here's a cardinal rule: when you're dealing with bullets of a weight that is not specified in your literature. Let me bring in closer here so you can see. You can see I've got 300 Savage. I've verified that I'm on the right cartridge. And now the cardinal rule is this: if you have data which is larger or for heavier bullets, you can use that data for the slightly lighter bullets, and you'll have safe pressures always. Don't ever go the other way around. Don't increase the weight of the bullet for the data that you have, but you can always use data for slightly heavier bullets up to say 5 grains, and that can be very safely used for lighter bullets. The only thing that's going to happen is you may get a slight velocity increase. I've decided, because I have it, I've got some H4198 Hodgdon 4198 I use in my 222, so I have the option of, this means double disc. I can use a double disc measure of 2.55, which is more than adequate for the type of shooting that I want to do. It's just a bunch of plinking, and it's very economical, and the velocity is going to be 2742. That's perfect. I could go up a little higher if I wanted to 2978, but it's not necessary. So if I want to do a charge of 2.55, that's the cc's now. That's the number of cc's. That is a volume measurement. So whereas you have over here, you have 34 grains, that represents 2.55 cc's. Now I want to show you how this works. If you take, sometimes the numbers that they give are a little forgiving to put you on the safe side of it. But if you did not know what the volume is, let's see, we move down here. If you did not know what the volume is according to this book, if you didn't have this book, or if you're using different data, that's perfectly acceptable if you use somebody else's written data. Then you take your VMD, which is 0.0750, and back it off a little bit so you can see. 0.0750 times 34 grains so I need 2.55, and that's exactly the measurement that they give you. So by magic of math, you simply arrive at the same thing they did in a cross check. So I want to have a measurement of 2.55 cc's. So you can see right here in the chart for the double disc chart, it's 2.55 cc's is made up by a 1.46 and a 1.09 disc. 146 right here at the bottom, and the other disc is, don't want to rely on memory, 1.09. Always double check, triple check 1.09 directly on top of 1.46, and that's the smaller one, remember, over the larger one. Double check those. Double check and triple check. 1.46, 109. And once I've got those, just pinch them with your fingers so you know that you've got the right holes, and move them right over to your powder measure. Now again, this is very important. Make sure you have the charge hole that you need right directly in line. It should be facing you and coming right at you with the actuator arm going up inside that slot that's right beneath the holes. As you can see, the double disc rises up above this side plate, so you need to elevate that with these adapters. You want to use the larger size machine screws and apply the adapters on the screws with these tabs on the outboard side, and they just simply slide on like that. And it's always good to use the square. There's a square edge and there's a round edge. if you place the square edge on this side, you'll always see where your charge hole is, and just simply slide it down, being sure that you capture those adapters on both sides, and then put your simple thumb screws on with the small diameter facing up. Now the powder measure is assembled. That's the most difficult part of the entire process. Now be sure that you turn your powder measure on. There's an on and off position. Make sure you turn it on, otherwise you're going to be you won't be charging any cases at all. So turn it to the on position. This swivel adapter allows you to turn this to any position that you desire. Just make sure you got it screwed down tightly, because that will affect the amount of upward pressure that case inside has. Always verify that you simply have one bottle of powder on your bench at any given time in your loading area. Verify the powder, go back and verify the data. You can never verify it too much. Fill your reservoir right up. I like to use a funnel to minimize spilling. Even though you're not going to use all the powder, it's always best to fill it nearly to capacity without going over naturally, but you want to maintain constant pressure on the powder down below. And then always place your cap on top. Don't want to have sparks get involved with that. And place the powder that you're using on the bench, and do not put it away. Don't put it back on the shelf with your other powders until you've returned all the powder from the reservoir back. Now here's something to always keep in mind. You can make mistakes easily when you're using a single stage press, but with a semi-progressive and progressive press, the mistakes tend to happen in neat little batches, sometimes very large batches. So make yourself a checklist if you want, so that you refresh everything that you've done before you begin loading. Make sure your primer tray is loaded with the correct primers. If it calls for rifle primers for what you're doing, make sure you have rifle primers in your tray and that is charged. Make sure you have your powder in the reservoir, and verify that the powder reservoir is turned on. You certainly don't want to load an entire batch of duds without powder in it. Make sure you got the correct dyes in naturally, that your settings are all correct, that you've got the correct shell holder. Once you've verified that everything is set and ready to go, advance your resizing die to the number 1 station, and you don't have to worry. You're not going to be dumping powder, because the powder can only dump when a case is in on the ram and actuates it. All right, so we've got our previously lubricated cases ready to go. These are brand new cases. They've never been charged before. So we'll begin, and we'll size this one, and we'll prime it, and then we'll continue around to the powder charging station. After we've primed it, the powder has dumped in. I could actually see it going down the chute. Now the first thing we want to do is remove that case and bring it over to my powder scale that I've preset for 34 grains. I verified the charge is charging 34.5 grains. That's well within acceptable tolerance. The actual maximum is 37 grains that I've verified in the book, so I'm absolutely below any maximum charge. And there's a certain tolerance involved with powders. Manufacturers of powders accept a certain tolerance for their loading density. These are essentially plinking loads. I'm really not going to be concerned about a half a grain. These are all for fun. Now we're at our bullet seating station. Powder's charged, ready to go, and I've preset this die to set at the correct depth, but always make sure that you verify the length with your calipers. Okay, I've checked against my overall length requirements, and they match. The measurement's correct, and we can proceed with the rest of them. I'll run a couple at least so you can see the entire process all at one time. So we're resizing our previously lubricated cases, priming, seating the primer deeply, going up to the powder charging station, grabbing a bullet, pushing it forward, placing a bullet on top, running it into the seating die, and then to the factory crimp die, firm crimp, and to the loading block. One more. And again, we're not looking for speed, we're looking for accuracy, and you don't want to be compounding problems. So that's it. God bless.